those groups are really nice ways to look at this.
We have assessor.
Oh, we know. Get that time now.
Yeah, right.
It's a great video.
How are you?
Well, people
How's it going?
they're getting live, but they don't have to research things. It's easy to really take that.
Chicken fight, that's that we here for.
We gotta be, we feel like we're providing a service.
Yeah. This is kind of the update based on this thing. Without our online and all that, so.
Have you seen these?
Their clock is 5 minutes off. I've told everybody except you know me getting this step ladder and fixing it. That thing never keeps done.
I know.
Morning, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, how are you?
Good.
I even made the assistant county administrator aware.
Haven't moved anywhere yet.
I'm going to mention that you're working.
Because I haven't gone anywhere, I assume probably after this is done, we'll try and tie it into that and kind of get the same sort of back and forth, that sort of thing. We'll see where this ends up, and then we'll go from there.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yep.
One job, the assistant county administrator.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Here, take this, we'll knock it off the wall. Yeah, exactly. We can't hold a battery for it.
Slides everybody over one time.
Call to order, New King County Board of Supervisors, February 24, 2021. Work session order. Ms. Watkins, will you call the roll?
Mr. Evelyn?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page? Here. Mr. Steers?
Here.
And Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning to the work session. This sunny, finally, Wednesday that we had outside. So we'll try to make this quick so everybody get out. All right, our first item on the agenda is the Heritage Public Library update. Mr. Pearson. Yes, ma'am.
I don't wear tall shoes today then. Can you see me at all anyway? Can you hear me? All right, so thank you all once again for letting me come to talk to you for a few minutes about, the library and the budget and our statistics and how things are going for us this year. I always feel like I send in the budget request and it kind of comes in with comments, but I feel like I need to have a chance to have a back and forth with you as well because, there's always questions and I'm always there for you to ask questions, but you're busy and I'm busy and sometimes I think we just don't connect, without my coming to you. So I submitted to you that extra little report as well to give you some of our statistics because we're pretty proud of ourselves this year. The silver lining of discovering that having a third branch that's a virtual branch is actually a very viable thing and has generated a lot of new users of the library through just electronic means. And the fact that we were able to kind of recover and start and continue to serve folks within just a few weeks of the shutdown in March and able to still be part of their lives and to give them what they need for schooling and for recreation and escape. I pat my staff on the back all the time, not physically, but virtually, because they did do such an outstanding job, and very proud of them. I submitted to you all a little extra report. Sorry if you can't hear me with this thing on here. I submitted to you that extra little report that shows you also some of the things that really kind of hit us. There's the COVID period where we compared March through June of last year to this current year to show where we had the real hits, such as material circulation. But what picked up, of course, was ebooks. And so we've started to put more money into our ebooks, and since we've migrated to Overdrive, it's now going to be able to sync with the school system's ebook lending as well. Facebook really picked up. We've actually been doing a lot of programming through that, and I think some of you have actually experienced our story times, some of our other events that we schedule online. So if you ever have any questions or suggestions, though, do reach out to us, because I'm there waiting for feedback and happy to get it. And if you have any questions about the report I submitted to you, it's sort of a return on investment kind of report, and you'll see some of the numbers there. It's just nice to be able to show you all where we're meeting you in terms of the budget, as well as in terms of service to the county, because it is a sort of different relationship we have. We're part of the infrastructure, but we're actually contracted, so to speak, as I was telling Larry. So you may not have as much, we're kind of out of your line of sight sometimes because we're over there doing our thing, but then we are working with your residents and serving them. And so if you hear things, I appreciate hearing them. If you have suggestions or questions, I appreciate hearing them, because we want to make sure that we're not missing anybody in our attempt to kind of serve everyone that we can. With regards to the budget request, you'll notice that it was sort of what I asked for last year. And keeping that in mind, because I felt like I wanted to stick to it, because I honestly do think that we could use that to grow and expand our mission. We do need more than just one full-time employee working there. The work has gotten very, it's getting to that point where we need to grow. However, I understand what's going on with the schools project, the parks project, and some of the unexpected wrinkles that will happen in any kind of construction project. And I understand that we just came through this really challenging, strange period, and we're still kind of in it. So my request, although I do stand by the fact that I do need the money that I'm asking for if we are to grow, and it's not a fictional number. It is librarian math, but it isn't fictional. That was not an intended pun. I am still hoping at least that you all can level fund us, if nothing else. That's something that they do see at the state library level, and it's something I would have to write up some exceptions for and say, please don't take my money. We depend on that a lot, as you know, for all of our collections. Pretty much every penny of the state aid goes into the books and databases that we supply. We've had a lot of grants, and we've been very lucky. I think we looked at the last quarter of last fiscal year and the first few, beginning of this fiscal year, and found that we had pulled in, almost, if you take into account our payroll protection plan, money that we brought in to help bridge us, around $100,000, which is kind of large in library world. And so we're going to continue to try and meet you all halfway by earning our keep, so to speak, with the financing. Not saying we're always going to be as lucky with grants as we were this year, but we keep trying, and we've got a lot of initiatives coming up that we're really excited about. We're about to actually have one more way to put the county kind of in the national spotlight, so to speak, because the library was just selected for a select group of public libraries across the whole United States to participate in something called Community Webs. wherein starting next month, we'll receive software and training and 0.5 terabyte of storage space online to begin archiving all of the electronic record created by our counties into a database that will be accessible and perpetually accessible to anyone who searches the Internet Archive. So it's very exciting because I applied for it as a Hail Mary, but we did get it. So we're one of 130 libraries across the nation who will be participating in this project. Very excited to get started with that next month. Might be picking your brains about what you think I need to find and ferret out and start putting into that database as well. So do you have any questions for me at all?
Anybody have any questions?
I mean, when the coffee's on board, I can just keep talking and droning on until you run out of time. So I just want to be able to answer any questions you might have.
So, Mr. Chairman, so my question is with the grant you received in the database, what kind of information will go into it?
That's going to be an interesting project, and they actually are going to have training for us to make sure that we're all kind of understanding how it works, et cetera. But what it'll mean is that each week some time will be set aside to go and look at the different, maybe the county websites, the Facebook pages, the newspaper, anything that's out there, because this is focusing on the local history that often has been neglected since it is kind of a newer way of communicating, and that is the communication that is conducted electronically. So it's exciting because it's actually open to anything, and including focused things. Like we could decide that we're going to create a targeted collection, so to speak, and it can pull in responses, links to sites across the board, but all on one topic. So I've been trying to think, what do I want to put together for that as well, so that we can have focused collections, as well as making sure we've got the general sort of flavor of what's going on in our world at this moment in time and going forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can just follow up on that, so are you talking about compiling data that's historical or current event information?
It's a very interesting project because it's local history, but it's living local history. It's local history in the making right now. And it's a way to make sure that it's safe, because so many things on the internet, as you know, disappear or are really harder and harder to find as each year passes. And there are things that can be of interest to, future researchers, future, citizens, people who want to look back. And so this is a way for us to start capturing proactively local history that, is really kind of in the moment. But yesterday is history. So this is our way of being able to participate in making sure that what goes on in the county is actually, saved and will be there so we can look back at it. You're welcome.
I see your Wi-Fi uses up like 79%. Is that due mostly because of the school kids coming using the Wi-Fi around the building?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi, it jumped hugely, just like our Facebook. We in the first few months of the shutdown, we noticed that we had of course, it over time kind of slows down, but our Facebook alone had jumped 200% in the first couple of months, which is crazy. The Wi-Fi jumped because we made sure that we made it known and that the Wi-Fi is on, and it always has been 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that people can come and use it if they need to without worrying about what our schedule is. And we started actually getting calls from folks who are having to, for instance, work from home, but they can't get it at their house, the internet, or it's not very strong. Teachers, students, and so we've had all kinds of folks. You probably saw the picture on Facebook, if you follow us on Facebook, of the couple that would come every week with their lawn chairs, their cooler, their dog, and their laptops and sit on the back porch. They were there regularly. We had folks pull up in minivans and just pop open the back hatch and just sit in the back there and work together. So that's what drove that, I think, is the making sure that people knew it was there, and a lot of folks did, but they didn't think about it until we really pushed it out there. And, we've been very active on social media to let people know about it. We actually, in the early stages when we were still shut down to the public inside, we kind of put more of our bandwidth towards the Wi-Fi so that it was a little hardier because we weren't using it as much inside, obviously. And that helped a lot because it was pretty dependable. And yeah, a lot of folks said the ones that had it at home knew it was faster. So if you were doing a lot of assignments or trying to do a Zoom meeting or what have you, that's what drove it. And they put us on, the state of Virginia also had a map of Wi-Fi locations across the state that people could go to. And so we got added to that, as well as putting it out in social media, and it was on the county site too. That really did drive it. It hasn't let up a whole lot. I mean, it's let up a little bit. It's kind of slowly, after that peak, coming back to the regular numbers, but I think that there's more awareness now of it, so it may continue to be slightly elevated over what we used to see.
Thank you for your budget update.
You're welcome. Any questions about the money numbers, the percentages, other than that? And if you have any, you know where I am.
We probably will have some as we move forward.
Thank you. Happy to come back and talk anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the Preston Hollow capital presentation. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Before you, you have a presentation, a request from Preston Hollow Capital to issue new bonds that would involve land base 3, 4, and 5 of Farmington Buchanan Land Unit development. The purpose of the new bonds that would be issued would go towards site development and infrastructure costs within those land base to expedite development in those areas. You have a copy of their proposal. They are proposing to borrow a little over $100 million in bonds for those 3 land bases. And it would require the board taking action to create a special assessment district. Or the county would be responsible for the collection of those assessments to repay those bonds. Mr. Guy is here, and he may want to add some additional information to that. But the request today for you is to move forward with the process that would establish the special assessment districts and the issuance of the special assessment bonds. And the first step that would be needed would be a public hearing. And the request for you today is whether or not to move forward with the public hearing process. It is much more involved than our normal zoning public hearing processes, which we're all familiar with. There is a series of public notices that has to be advertised. It has to be sent out to the property owners within the zoning as well. The earliest that we could move to a public hearing, it would probably be your April meeting at the earliest, and could possibly even be May at the earliest, given all the noticing requirements that's involved. I also would like to highlight too that you do have an attachment in your packet, a proposal that out of the debt that would be borrowed, there would be a contribution to the county from Preston Hollow Corporation to go towards capital improvements, future capital improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Mr. Guy, do you have anything you want to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, other than it was actually 44 million that would actually be borrowed of new money. The 100 million is the total development cost of the total project. I just wanted to make that correction. It was be 44 million what they're asking for. And Rodney, I think, has portrayed all the rest of it. We appreciate your consideration and patience in going through this process. I think that's, Rodney, I think you covered everything pretty well except for that explanatory note on the actual amount of what we call new bonds that would be issued.
All right, thank you. I know that the board has seen this presentation, and we've met with Preston Hollow numerous times, so I think the goal of this vote today is we don't want Preston Hollow to go forward if there's not confidence in support for the board to support these bonds, but if it is, we want to give them, we'll make that vote clear so we can go forward with the public hearing. Is that correct? Ms. Page?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. One thing, when this first came to us many, many months ago, one major concern that I had, and I think that I share with the majority of my fellow board members, is the collection of the special assessment. And my request of Preston Hollow was to find a way that it would not be included in our tax bill. And my concern is and has been that at the end of the tax season, then our residents would be, those residents would be faced with not only their personal property tax, their real estate tax, however, they would be faced with an additional $1,200 at the end of the year. And with that being said, it would be sent out through the Treasurer's Office on our tax bill. And so as I tried to explain to the Preston Hollow group, you do not have a clue as to how many phone calls Ms. Page, the Board of Supervisors, County Administration will be receiving to include the Treasurer's Office, because we have additional money that we're collecting. It's not saying that we would not have residents that would move here that would understand, but I think that poolside conversations and all of that would be, wow, we paying extra money for the same thing that you all have. And so it was my desire and has been that this group find another way to collect their special assessment for these homes. And I can tell you that I ride, not daily, but I ride through those land bays, and I don't know, and I can't begin to tell you how much it takes to build up that infrastructure over there, to sell homes over there, but I can tell you that whether they have a special assessment or not, that they pay at one time, or if they pay throughout the years, that they are indeed selling homes over in the farms of New Kent. And so for that, we're appreciative, but my objection is still the collection of the special assessment bonds through our county Treasurer's Office.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just would like to second Ms. Page's opinion there. I really don't have any desire for the county to be collecting debt for the next 30 years and having to explain to people for the next 30 years what that special assessment is about. So I think it would be in our best interest, at least from my opinion, that we go ahead and just move forward, and I don't see anything that would make me want to vote for this.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I agree with Ms. Page and Mr. Lockwood with that as well. And in the past, generally, when we have a public hearing, the people that come to the public hearing to speak are the ones that are affected the most. And this is going to affect people that aren't even residents in New Kent County yet. So we're passing on, again, another tax for people that don't even live here yet. And they don't have a voice in this at all. because they're not even here yet. So to me, the public hearing, to me, is a waste of time because it's going to affect people that aren't even around. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Of course, I don't live in that area. That's not in my district. But when I look back over the background of this project from starting way back in 2006, and I don't think anybody on this board was here in 2006. Nobody, right? And I mean, they've come a long way from 2006 to 2020. And, you know, at one time in 2012, the 2006 bonds went into default. And somehow these guys regrouped, they came back, they put forth a lot of effort to continue the project going forward. And unlike some other projects in the county, and I'm sure you know which ones I'm talking about, especially Maidstone wasn't as fortunate. And they've done a lot for the county, as they pointed out here. They contributed 10 acres of land for a fire station. They donated the land and the infrastructure for the farmers market. They completed the permanent water solution development for the area at $605,000. They've addressed the various maintenance concerns at a cost of $350,000. They've contracted and completed final asphalt paving streets throughout Land Bay 4 at a cost of $275,000. And now they're asking us if we will help them out in this situation, that they're willing to donate another $2 million to the county for capital improvements. And $2 million would go a long way to me in the county for capital improvement projects. And as I've explained before, if you're in the market to buy a home in this community and you're explained up front that you will pay an extra $100 a month or $1,200 a year in additional taxes, and it's explained to you, it's in your contract when you purchase the home, I don't know why you would be calling the treasurer's office complaining about having to pay the tax. And according to Mr. Guy, he said that it would be very explicit in their contract that they would pay this additional fee. So if they can afford a home there and they understand that they're going to be paying an extra $1,200 a year in taxes, then I don't know why we'd be getting all the phone calls. And as far as according to what was mentioned earlier, is that people would be paying this tax before they ever got here. They wouldn't pay the tax till they bought the home, and then they would start paying the tax. But I mean, I'm all for it. Sounds like I might be the only one, but I would like to see the project go forward. And as we were told earlier in an earlier meeting, Mr. Guy said that if the board did not approve this bond issuing, that it would not cause hardship. It would just slow down their process of what they want to do for the development. And with those reasons, you know, I would support it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely, I was not a board member in the year of 2006. However, as a resident, I watched the conversations back and forth through the Planning Commission with the Farms of New Kent. I saw the many objections to the Farms of New Kent, as well as those that welcome those farms. So in my statement, I want President Howard to be very clear, and those constituents of mine in District 3 in the Farms of New Kent to understand that absolutely I want them to have their amenities. Absolutely I want them to benefit to the promises that were made through the proffers of the PUD for the Farms of New Kent. However, it is very easy for us today to sit here and say we will not be receiving phone calls. It's very easy today to sit here to say that all of the things that will or will not happen. However, I can look to my immediate right and see a supervisor that has, ever since I've been on this board, been contacted about the Avalon tax, a tax that was passed before the Patriots Landing was even close to completion, and still we are faced with what are we going to do with the Avalon tax at the Patriots Landing. I know this is not an Avalon tax. I know this is a special assessment, but I know that we do have approximately 200 plus homes that are now in the mentioned land base, and all of those residents pay this assessment when they purchase, upon the purchase of their home. And I don't know, and I have not heard of any complaints of those that have paid those assessments up front, and I have no interest in becoming a collection agency for a developer. And that does not mean that I don't appreciate the improvements. It does not mean that that it is not appreciated by New Kent County of the promises that were made through the PUD. It does not mean that. However, it does mean that my request was to find a way to collect the special assessment bonds. Thank you.
Well, I think, Mr. Guy, you were here about 3 years ago.
I've been here for 6 years.
Yeah, but the last, I think when you came up here last time, a lot of that stuff that Mr. Steers just mentioned, I think going along with what Ms. Page said, we could work together as a county and your residents to make that community better. I think we downsized some of the houses and stuff and, a bunch of different things so the residents could get their amenities quicker. So I do think that we are working with you and the residents, and I do have the same issues about collecting the special use tax as well. So I take my hat off to what you've done out there. It really looks well, but I think you told me 3 years ago, if you got that done, you wouldn't see me anymore. I think it's what you told me. So we're back here, and I don't think it would be any problem if it wasn't for just having the county have to collect that special use tax. I don't think we care too much about getting it refinanced. But anyway, I'll entertain a motion. If there's no other discussion. Mr. Tiller.
Mr. Chairman, I move to deny the request from Preston Hollow Capital for the issuance of new special assessment bonds for land base 3, 4, and 5 of the Farms and New Kent Plan Unit Development.
Any further discussion? If none, Ms. Watkins, poll the members, please.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Nay.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
One is the lowest.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Well, number one, thank you for your consideration. And yeah, I've been here for 6 years. I may become a resident now, and I'll probably be here for another 6 years. But I appreciate your consideration, and I appreciate everybody's comments, both kind comments and ones which I understand the reasons for denying the request. But I want to make sure that it really wasn't a denial of the refinancing. It was denial of the method of collecting the taxes. So an issue is if you just replace new money or something, that's not an issue with you guys. It's the way we would spread out the taxes. That's what I want just to clarify stuff. But beyond that, I appreciate everybody taking the time and the effort to consider it. And we look forward to still moving along out there. In fact, I got to go out to work right now. So thank you very much.
Good luck.
Okay.
Next item is the Vision of New Kent Strategic Plan presentation. Mr. Hathaway.
Hi, I'm Terry Peterson. I'm chairperson for the Strategic Plan Commission. And as you know, the Board of Supervisors appointed 12 citizens to the Strategic Plan Steering Committee to assist Arnett Muldrow and Associates with the process. The committee members have been engaged and accessible, and we have worked diligently over the past year to develop the draft plan. Sorry, my voice is going. The plan has seen significant public engagement through community survey, tracking of participation, promotion, and postcards to residents, 2 virtual workshops, Zoom meetings, Facebook Live videos, etc. This resulted in nearly 5,700 public touchpoints. Through the 2 workshops and public input, the committee and Arnett, Muldrow and Associates developed a vision statement to reflect the common vision of the community. We also narrowed down the input to 5 core themes: infrastructure, growth management, quality of life, governance, and resiliency. Based on the strategic plan themes, the committee developed a series of goals and strategies to achieve the ultimate vision while laying the foundation for implementation, such as incorporating the strategic plan into an updated comprehensive plan. We have provided the draft plan for your review, and Aaron Arnett, our consultant, will go over some of the highlights of the plan. We look forward to getting your input and then sharing the draft with the public. And unfortunately, I have a prior commitment, so I will not be able to stay, but Mr. Arnett can take over. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I appreciate that from Terry. And again, my name's Aaron Arnett, and thank you all for having me. This draft plan, which I think that you all received this week or last week, is it's a pretty big process that we've been working on for a long time, and we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to share it with you first to get your input before we open it up to the public, which is getting ready to happen hopefully very soon. So what I would like to do is share with you what has been done, go over some of the draft vision and go over the draft vision and some of the strategies, and then finally talk about next steps. Let's see if I can get this to work. Do I use the clicker?
Yeah, but you have to make sure that the mouse arrow is on the screen. So you might, roll it around.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry? Oh, is the mouse on?
It's red.
The thing still has to be on the screen. Right?
Should be green.
Oh, it should. All right. We are good. You'd think I'd have technology figured out by now. Let's see, how do I get it on this? Oh, all right. We're good to go. Stay. Don't move. All right. Well.
There you go.
All right. There we go. So what's been done, draft plan, and then next steps. So the first thing, and you all have probably seen this before, is the plan process. It's been a 5-phased process. It began in late January of 2020 with a project kickoff. That moved into the engagement phase, which really, that has happened throughout the entire portion of this process. And of course, COVID did impact this, as it's impacted everything. It's really probably definitely extended the timeline of the process. But one of the things I'm going to share with you here in a second is we've still had tremendous public participation during this. And actually, Terry mentioned that, and I'm going to give you more details on. That led us into the third phase, which was the strategic assessment itself. And that included the online survey, which I'm sure most folks in this room participated in because we had so much participation, as well as the market analysis that we've done. I'll share with you a little bit of detail on that. And then ultimately, kind of a SWOT analysis that led us to those core themes that Terry was just mentioning. That moved into the fourth phase, which was the visioning process, and we had 2 community workshops that were, again, well attended during that process that I'll share some detail with you. But that helped us to draft the draft vision, as well as get us to where we are right now. And where we are right now, again, is that draft phase, and that's where I want to what I want to share with you today. So as I mentioned, COVID certainly impacted this process. But all that being said, we had tons of input throughout the process. And, you know, this by the numbers kind of shows what we're talking about here. You know, Terry led the citizen committee, which you all appointed, which was, by the way, that committee has been extremely accessible and helpful through this entire process. I mean, we've met probably at least a dozen times, if not more. We've got another meeting next week. So they've been extremely helpful. As I mentioned, we kicked off in late January last year, and we had 60 people attend that kickoff. That was actually that's a pretty good attendance for a county this size. But then we moved into the community survey. That was an online survey. There was a lot of active promotion of that. We had over 1,000 people participate in that online survey. Our goal was 1,000 people. I didn't think we were going to get there, given the size of the community, but we did. And a lot of that had to do with the work of the committee and Rodney and his staff to promote it and get the word out. So that was awesome. We have 561 followers on the Facebook page. Actually, there's probably a few more than that since I've put this slide together. That's important because the Facebook page we've been using throughout this process to inform people of what's going on, but also really be the delivery mechanism of many of the virtual tools that we've been using, and I'm going to explain in a second. Part of that was the visioning workshop that we had. We had 10 focus group meetings, I think, 10 roundtable meetings. This was conducted virtually via Zoom, and we had over 120 people participate in that, stakeholders within the community, for them to give us their thoughts on the vision and the future of the community. And then finally, the community design workshop. That I'll go into in a little bit more detail later, but that was a 2-week process. We had a number of online public input presentations that we made both live and pre-recorded, but in particular the live versions allowed the community participants to ask us questions, comment, participate in live surveys, provide their input during the process. But we had over 3,900 views of those videos during that 2-week period. So, as Terry mentioned, if you add all this up together, we had close to 5,700 public touch points during this process. And, that's pretty impressive. And I would venture to say that it's probably more than we would have had if we had to think about this creatively and go to some of our virtual tools, realizing some of the limitations with virtual tools as well. So this has been great. It's been a robust public process from the beginning. So the plan itself, the overall framework, our charge from the very beginning of this plan is for this strategic plan to be the foundation of the comprehensive plan. That was part of the RFP that went out. That was, our scope was based on that. That's very important. We've even touched on that, I think, here in this meeting. So that was first and foremost our charge, is this needs to be a bridge to the comp plan update, which would be the next step. And because of that, it's a bit of a hybrid strategic plan, if you think about it. It's got your typical strategic planning elements, like, of course, the input that I've just talked about within the community, the broad-based vision and goals, the strategies that you always see in a strategic plan, that high level. But also has some things that aren't typical of a strategic planning process. And really, given the comprehensive planning focus of this, there has always been a planning focus of this plan. So we've definitely developed a development vision. I'm going to share that with you with our character boards. We've done a full comprehensive market analysis, and so there's the economics elements of this, which is more typical of a comp plan as opposed to a strategic plan, but that's cooked into this as well. And then another unique thing is expanding your marketing tools and your communication tools. So we'll talk about that as well. So a bit of a hybrid plan from what you might be used to with a strategic plan to something that might be more planning focused. And again, all that comes back to the fact that this is the foundation of that next step, which is the comprehensive plan. So the strategic assessment and visioning, so this includes that ongoing engagement, the market research I've talked about, the visioning workshop, and the community design workshop. So I've mentioned the online survey a few times here, and basically what it was is it asked the community questions based on the community character, what they felt like the community's assets were. Their perceptions of the community, whether it's quality of life or governance or economic development, those sorts of things. But also we asked them to give what they thought perception of folks from the outside might have of New Kent County. We asked about general vision of the community and got some incredible responses there, which really plugged right into the draft vision statement I'm going to share with you in a few slides. And then ultimately needs in terms of businesses, activities, and those sorts of things. All of this is really important because, number one, the survey was, there's a lot of participation, as I've already mentioned, but we were tracking that participation throughout this process. We were trying to identify gaps, people that we weren't reaching. And one of the things that we did, we worked with Rodney and his staff sent out postcards to those areas of the county that weren't being represented early on in the online survey. And as you all know, your county varies tremendously from east to west. And we were seeing definitely some gaps in participation from that. So the postcards were sent out to those underrepresented zips. But we're also looking at underrepresented populations of the county as well, and that were participating in the survey. And from that, we used that to populate some of our visioning workshop roundtables. So we did have robust input. We know that there were gaps. We definitely addressed those gaps as best as we could. There's probably still gaps, but at the end of the day, we had robust participation throughout the process. The findings of, I don't know why that's doing that. I think where does it say previous? There we go. All right. The findings of the survey really helped frame the workshop discussions that we had after that. So the market analysis, as I mentioned, it was pretty comprehensive. It's summarized in Chapter 4 of the document, but there's a lot more detail in the appendices of the document about this. But essentially what we did is we did a market definition study, what market, what geography is relevant to New Kent County. We did a demographic profile, and we actually went fairly deep with that demographic profile. Your market is changing, you're evolving. All know that, and we track that. And then we did a market assessment where we looked at trends and opportunities for commercial, for residential, trends for employment in the county as well. With all of that detail, we overlaid that again with what the community survey was telling us, and the residents in the community were telling us with their needs within the community, and that helped us kind of formulate the economics portion of the strategic plan. So next was the character boards, and I know you can't see this slide, and that's okay. You can see a lot of detail in your materials that were submitted to you. This is Chapter 5 of the plan. But essentially what you're talking about here is the design vision. From day one, the conversation has been led by, how do we grow? We know we're growing. How do we grow in this county, in this rural county, and still protect our rural character? So these character boards, these design boards illustrate what that design vision happens to be. And they're based on the different development patterns that you have here within the county, and they outline key design principles. This is the result of the 2-week workshop. I'm going to share a little bit more detail about this as we get into some of the strategies. But really, this is that design vision that really should be input directly into the comp plan itself moving forward. And another unique thing that we did was brand expansion. So we didn't recreate your brand identity and your marketing for the county because you really have a good brand. Our company does community branding all across the country, and we from the very beginning we saw what you had, and it's really good. Our focus here was simply to update it. It's a few years out. We did some simple tweaks to the main logo to update that. You all, I know, had worked on an update of your county seal as well during this process, which was awesome, incredible, and we certainly reflected that in this. But this was part of that same process, essentially. So updated it. We wanted to make sure that we incorporated the vision of the strategic plan in the messaging. You're going to see that in Chapter 6 in the report, which goes over the brand statement. It's very important because as you're communicating to the locals and residents, you want to make sure that you communicate what that vision of the future happens to be. And then expandability. We wanted to take what you had, update it, and then expand it. And you'll see here on the lower left, there's a number of different unique but connected logos, graphics for the different communities that exist within the county, whether it's Barnesville or Providence Forge or Eltham, what have you. But all part of that more expanded marketing tool set. We also looked at your departments within the county, and you can see this is just a collage of some of the things that we did, but you can see a logo for Parks and Recreation. You can see the badge for the Sheriff's Department, which includes the new county seal and all of that. And then ultimately we applied that brand identity to existing tools that you already use, as well as new tools that we feel from a strategic standpoint that you should do to expand your communication tool set. And we're going to come back to that too as we go through this. So, the public engagement, the market research, the visioning workshop, the community design workshop, all of this was a months-long conversation here within the community that led us to these 5 core themes that Terry mentioned earlier. So infrastructure, things like roads and water and sewer and broadband, growth management, so that's the planning element of this in particular. So land management, economic development, design, planning, quality of life. So that's 2 things. That's the character of the community that we love and we enjoy, but it's also those aspects of the community that give us that great quality of life that we have, like public safety, like education, like the library, and healthcare, and all those sorts of things. Governance. So things like government functions, facilities, fiscal management. And then finally, resiliency. And resiliency was interesting, and you'll hear more about that when I go through the strategies, but all of this happened during COVID. We kicked it off about 6 weeks before lockdown, so to speak. And it was interesting to where that conversation really built throughout this process. And we learned about the impacts that it made, it made to things like library and education and healthcare and everything. So that became a big component of this as well. So everything I've shared with you up until this point is the foundation for the draft plan. So I'll hit on some of the highlights of the draft plan right now. And I want to start with a little bit of context here, and you see kind of by the numbers here. So we have the vision statement, which is the next slide, and basically what that is that's our aspirational statement of what we want to be as New Kent County 20 years from now. So that's our end game, is what that vision statement is. Then we have the 5 strategic themes that we've already talked about here. Those are our broad-based areas of focus. That's really the framework of the plan itself. We have 21 goals, so each one of those strategic themes has 4, 5, 6, perhaps, goals that fall out under that. So those are our priorities of each one of those strategic themes. Those are our direction. And then finally, we have the 111 strategies. Those are our actions to achieve our goals, to achieve our vision. That's how we're going to get to where we're going. Now, I've mentioned a few times that there's always been a planning focus. Certainly with our strategies, there's a planning and implementation focus of this plan. Again, atypical of normal strategic plans where you have 111 strategies. The thought has always been that this needs to be the bridge to that next planning tool and other planning tools, certainly beginning with the comp plan. So the draft vision statement. Now, again, this is that aspirational statement, what we want to become in the next 20 years. Now, the committee has worked hard on this. We had multiple meetings to come up with this draft vision statement. I know that you've just seen this right now. We would love to get your input moving forward on this. This whole plan is a draft, so there's certainly opportunities for us to take your input and amend this over time. So we'd love that. But here's the draft vision statement. New Kent County will remain a diverse community that values its outstanding rural character, history, natural environment, and quiet community lifestyle. We maintain a blend of balanced rural and suburban values through thoughtful planning, managed economic development, and responsible and accountable governance that will attract new residents and business investment that enhances our county. So that's the draft vision statement as it stands right now. One thing I want to note about this is there's absolutely carryover. This is important. The last strategic plan you all did was in 2009, I believe, 2008, 2009. There's a little bit of carryover from that strategic plan and its vision to where we are today. You even see this vision incorporated, or elements of this vision incorporated into your comprehensive plan that was done after your strategic plan. That's important because those challenges, those opportunities that you all have now that came to light in this strategic plan, they're some of the same challenges from a decade ago that are still relevant today and are still valid today. So we certainly don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I say that to say that strategic planning or planning in general, it's not a one and done thing. This is the next step. Okay, this is taking that previous strategic plan and evolving it to 2021. So,
can I ask one question?
Sure.
I guess you wanted a little bit of feedback, just offhand. I see at the bottom says responsible and accountable governance that will attract new business. To me, that reads we don't have accountable and responsible government right now. I don't like that statement.
And that's,
tell me if I'm wrong, but that's just how I read it.
Well, that's helpful. I mean, that really is helpful. A vision statement needs to be 100% positive, okay? And I think that's where your comment is absolutely coming from. I got you. And that's great input because that may point us to an edit to this that sort of positions that as the continuations of a responsible and accountable government. I appreciate that. That's exactly the kind of input we need both with this draft vision as well as the goals and the strategies themselves. So, in fact, Terry's gone, but she emailed me last night, we've been talking about this for months, and she came up with a new strategy, and she said, hey, what about this? I don't see it in there. And I'm like, you know what? That's a great point. Again, we are still in the draft stages of this, and we can certainly edit that, but I hear exactly where you're coming from. We don't want it to be negative, the vision. Vision should not be negative. All right, so can y'all read everything on this slide? Okay, good. Well, fortunately, I couldn't fit all 111 strategies on this. But this is really just to illustrate there's a lot to this. Y'all have been given a lot. In fact, I don't even expect y'all to have absorbed all of this just yet. I want to give y'all time. But the goals and the strategies are really the meat of this plan. There's tons of detail in this plan, particularly with the strategy board matrix, which is one of the appendices of this. So in Chapter 7, that details the goals for each one of our strategic areas as well as all of the individual strategies. But the appendix, strategy board matrix, really provides all of the detail for that. And real quickly, what you'll see here is when you go to that appendix, you have a list of goals. You have unique coding for each one of the strategies themselves within the matrix. You have a description of that specific strategy, and that points directly back to Chapter 7. You have priorities. The committee really helped us out with this. Certainly would appreciate your input on that as well. So we have high, medium, and low priorities. It's pretty self-explanatory with that. Next is our partners. Now, with the partners columns, we have both a lead partner agency as well as partners who would also be involved, be at the table for that particular strategy. And that's important because this being a strategic plan in particular, this is a community plan. This isn't just a county government plan by any stretch of the imagination. This is for all of the community. And so because of that, you'll notice when you go through and you see all of these lead agencies, it's not the county every single time. There are certain initiatives that are ongoing that different departments or different agencies or different partners are doing. That's reflected in our strategic plan, and they need to, certainly bear some of the responsibilities of implementation moving forward. So I think that's an important note. We have benchmarks, and benchmarks is a little bit different than the priorities, and basically what that outlines is the timelines for completion. Many of these strategies are linked to each other. So within the benchmarks, you'll see some very specific dates. Okay, we're going to start here. We estimate this is going to take 6 months, a year, 18 months to do. Others are going to be linked to others and say, okay, we're going to update the zoning ordinance once we finish the comp plan. So that's when that one starts. Others are ongoing. Frankly, the completion benchmark of many of these strategies are when it gets done, essentially. But as I mentioned, there are several efforts that are ongoing that need to be part of this more universal strategic plan. So that's in there as well. The comments section provides a little bit more detail to each one of the strategies, including some implementation strategies as well. And then finally is potential metrics. And, that's also detailed in the main report, but it's also covered here in the strategy board matrix. And basically, these are metrics that you all would use collectively to monitor the progress over time. It's important to note that a lot of these baseline metrics are going to be developed. They're TBD at this point. They're going to be developed in the implementation of this plan. So when you do the comprehensive plan, for example, you're going to create those baseline and projected metrics. When you do the facilities maintenance master plan, if you do a parks and recreation master plan, a lot of those metrics are going to fall out there. This being a bit more planning focused, the objectives and the strategies are most important. But however, those metrics are very helpful to track progress of the plan over time. So that is, what's that?
I just wanted to ask, when it comes to the metrics, I'd like to see that, and this might just be a matter of process and layout, but when you've got like growth management strategies and then you've got the goals for those strategies, I'd like to see the performance metrics tied directly on the same page, same section for the metrics that correspond with each of those goals.
Got it.
So that, you're not looking for the tie back to, okay, how did we ensure that development, what is the measure for that? And have it readily accessible as it pertains to each of the goals.
That's a great comment, and really, you just touched on one of the challenges that we had in packaging all this together, because that happens in the strategy board matrix, but it's not necessarily reflected in Chapter 7 where we're outlining that. It's a great point, and I think that's something that we can certainly reflect here. Thank you. So now I want to go over the strategies. So you'll be happy to know that I'm not going to go over all 111 strategies. The good thing is we worked with the committee to identify some of the key strategies. And again, this is based on, at this point, the perceptions of the committee themselves. And of course, they've been involved in this conversation from day one. We went through this exercise not for this presentation today, but ultimately we are going to, when we get to final plan, we're going to create a graphic executive summary poster for the plan that can be kind of folded up in brochure format as well. And so we work with the committee to identify the 10 key strategies that are going to be highlighted on that. Now, this can change as we go through the review process as well, but these are the 10 key strategies. I don't want to say top 10 because I don't think anyone is more important than another. But these are 10 key strategies, and I'll just share those with you. And then, the rest of the strategies, you can kind of take your time and review on your own as well. So the first one, and I've only mentioned this probably a dozen times in this presentation, is update the comprehensive plan. And honestly, this is the critical first step of the implementation of your strategic plan. Comp plans need to be updated. I talked about a plan not being one and done. Your comp plan is a really good comp plan. It absolutely is, but it's dated, and you need to, both statutorily and moving forward, because 2021 is a new time. We need to update that. So that's a critical first step. It's also tied to many of the other strategies of this plan. One thing too I'll mention is our focus, again, has been not only for this to be the bridge to the comprehensive planning process, but frankly, this strategic plan and elements of the strategic plan, whether it's vision, whether it's the character boards that design vision, whether it's the economics and the market research that we did, this is essentially the first chapters of that comprehensive plan. You're going to be able to hit the ground running when you get to that update. So that's something. And another thing too, I mentioned carryover before in terms of vision. There's also going to be, I think, carryover from your previous comp plan, because again, it is a good comprehensive plan, to your next comprehensive plan. There's going to be a lot of new, but there's going to be some things that are carried over. And I mentioned that to say that, there are some things in your existing comprehensive plan that, frankly, you all haven't necessarily accomplished just yet. The vision and the strategies are still, 100% valid today. But I do think when you go through this comprehensive planning process, that's going to get you into a situation where you're asking questions about, okay, how can we move this particular strategy forward? We know it was here. We know it's still relevant today. How can we move it forward? That might open up a discussion about other initiatives. That certainly will open up a discussion, I think, about staffing as well, because a lot of what's in here, quite frankly, this is a robust plan. A lot of what is in here is going to take warm bodies to do it. So that's the comp plan. Next is use the development character boards that I've mentioned earlier to guide land development patterns. And essentially what we're talking about here is incorporating that design vision, that development vision that's in these 8 character boards, incorporating that into the comp plan, incorporating that into the zoning code when we update that, incorporate that into the subdivision code. You can see those 8 boards that we have are all based on land development patterns that make you who you are and make you unique in your opportunity areas, whether it's the villages and hamlets that you have, whether it's the crossroads that you have within your rural community. Certainly, you've got this great interstate and interchanges that provide you great economic development opportunities like your business park areas as well. There's a little bit probably more specific design focus on the New Kent Courthouse where we are right now, this village in there that kind of provides a vision for it becoming that centralized community space, gathering space for the community, not just government, but also activity as well. Then countryside and, of course, residential development, which I think is one of the keys for the future here. So one of the things that you'll see in that chapter on these character boards are these design principles that essentially carry over from development pattern to development pattern, board to board. And a lot of that has to do with looking at opportunities to concentrate development where it's appropriate. And we know growth is happening. You're one of the fastest growing communities in the state. That's probably going to continue. How can we accommodate that growth that's going to happen, but still preserve that character that we all enjoy, that rural quality of life that we all have? So that's a common principle. In order for us to do this, we need to make sure that we create that environment to receive that growth where it's appropriate, and that's through infrastructure mainly. Also looking at opportunities for a mixture of uses and activities that you might have in some of these development areas, so to speak. I think that's very important moving forward as well. And then finally, enhancing the communities that we have. I touched on it before when I talked about your community. Your county is very different from the east side to the west side, but you also have all of these different unique communities that make up your county. You're unique in that there's no, there's no official municipality in your county, but there are official places. There are official communities. So a big focus of this also, not just preserving this character that we have, but enhancing this character of the future, including these really cool, unique communities that you have in the county and that differ from one side of the county to the other. Next is simply revise the zoning code to reflect the comp plan and the strategic plan. Again, this goes right in line, tied to the comp plan, and really we think that early on, that would be some simple edits that you could happen during the comprehensive planning process, maybe to align it a little bit more with Virginia code. And then ultimately probably is going to take a rewrite of the zoning code itself. So looking at things like districts, looking at things like the overall map that's going to certainly connect to the future land use map of the comprehensive plan as well as that's developed. Perhaps it's looking at form-based development standards as part of that new zoning code. And we also need to look at the PUD standards and the subdivision standards as well. Next is develop and adopt a plan to provide enhanced internet. I'm sure that sounds kind of familiar to you all here. It's interesting that from the very first hand that was raised, January 2020, when we did the kickoff, that was one of the probably the most commented of needs within the county. Well, the great thing is you all have been in the trenches working on this throughout this process as well. Y'all have got a plan for this. In fact, we've kept editing this portion of the strategic plan because y'all kept moving that ball further down the field, which is great. It's important, however, that it be reflected in the strategic plan. Y'all are working on it right now. Y'all are working on that very hard. This ongoing strategy and several others are reflected in the strategic plan. Facilitate annual report card evaluation of the strategic plan. I mentioned that none of these 10 key strategies are more important than the others, but frankly, this is probably the most important of all strategies because it not only helps you track this plan, but it really is that key bridge to everything else that you're going to be doing moving forward. So what we've developed here is a simple tool for you all to use during your annual budget and goal setting processes to take each one of these strategies, and this goes back to the comment too about performance metrics as well, but go to each one of these strategies and simply note whether they're complete, whether they're in progress, where they are in the process, and also have opportunities to put updates and changes to that particular strategy. This needs to be done on an annual basis. This is an extremely simple tool, which is exactly what it should be. And not only that, several communities, many communities, create an online dashboard for this. This would be something that would be simple for you all to do that I think is really important because it communicates to your citizenry, hey, this is what we've been working on, this is where we are. So everyone knows what's happening. Part of that is incorporating departmental strategic planning into this annual goals and strategic planning process. And this is all about alignment. Many of your departments have been doing their own actually most of your departments have been doing their own strategic planning. It varies relatively significantly from simple SWOTs to a full-blown strategic plan. So the idea here is to create a tool that can help all of these align with this strategic plan. So what we've done is we've created a template to where each one of the departments can use that as a guide during their annual strategic planning processes to make sure that what they're doing syncs up with the same strategic plan. And by the same token, the same similar report card tool for those individual departments to track their progress over time. Next is recruit commercial businesses based on the potential identified in the strategic plan. So you all are a small county, but you're growing, and you're growing rapidly. You still rely to this day on outside businesses to support your citizenry here. This project that we're talking about here, the strategic plan, absolutely did include that comprehensive market analysis where we were able to identify demand and the scale of demand for all different types of commercial businesses and others here in this community. And so this is simply, we know what there's opportunity for. Let's figure out how we can accommodate it here. So for example, some of the highest level opportunities based on demand, one is general merchandising. General merchandising showed $58 million in leakage. Leakage basically is demand. People are going outside the community because that particular good or service isn't here. We did hear comments about the proliferation of some of the dollar type discount stores that you have here in the community. Well, that's because there's demand for that here. $58 million is a lot of demand. And it solely as a frame of reference, a Walmart does about on average nationwide, does about $71 million a year. And I'm not saying at all that you all need to recruit Walmart here to this community, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of scale. Grocery came up over and over again. You have demand for about $19 million in grocery sales. Well, a typical food line on average, in rural communities it's a little bit less, but on average is about $22 million a year. So you have demand for another grocery store here within the county. Home centers was home centers too. You're leaking about a half of a home center. You're not going to get a Home Depot or a Lowe's, but that's how much demand there is here right now. A lot of these opportunities can translate to smaller, independent type businesses. That's reflected in the main plan itself. A huge opportunity for you all. A huge opportunity for you all is restaurants. there's demand for about $36 million a year in restaurants. Most of that is full-service restaurants, so that's sit-down type restaurants as opposed to fast food. There's still demand for fast food. The important thing about that is this demand is based off of the local needs, okay? Your local population needs new restaurants, but it also translates to visitor needs as well. These numbers are local needs, but visitors need this as well. You've got a great community. You've got great visitor assets. You've also got this spine right down the center of your county that brings, I don't know how many people through your county every single day. They need this kind of stuff as well, and that's an important opportunity. So really, the question here is we know that there's this demand. We've pinpointed this. So where can they go? That's part of the planning processes, but also this gives us the knowledge to know, okay, this is what we can target and recruit moving forward.
Yeah, just a comment about the retail opportunities and what you said the demand could be for. And I mean, I know I've spoken at a lot of community meetings just around where I live, and people come in there and say, I moved out here to get away from that. And I understand. And I did too. 36 years ago, I moved out here to get away from the traffic. But yet I told so many people when they complain about the traffic, and I said, yep, but as soon as you moved out here, you became part of that traffic. You became part of the congestion. So to me, it's kind of, that could be a really lopsided thing there. The demand, I understand, because people are going outside of the county. But yet the majority of them moved out here to get away from that demand.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, because it's easy for me to say there's this much demand. But at the end of the day, it's what's right for you all in your community. On the one hand, some of this demand you're not going to be able to stop if you want to. On the other hand, too, some of this demand is something that your community needs more locally, so to speak. And again, that might be looking at developing or growing some of these really cool villages and communities that you have, and having that be the place, when Providence Forge, where some of these great uses that we see there's demand for, trying to recruit that independent restaurant to be there to serve the locals, or maybe that independent shop to be there to serve the locals. So make sure it's unique to your community and what you want. But again, and I hear you loud and clear on this, and when I was mentioning general merchandising before, I saw a couple of heads nodding. That's not to suggest at all that this demand means you need to have more Dollar Generals or more Walmarts or more whatever, more Food Lines, whatever. We want to make sure that this demand that you have is what, it's what you recruit and what you target is right for who you are. Here's another case in point too, grocery. Grocery, there's demand for grocery. You've got this great farmer's market. That's part of, that grocery commerce that happens within the community. So that farmer's market provides fresh produce and other goods that are in that grocery category that's right for the New Kent community as well. So there's a lot of planning that's cooked into that in terms of how we develop our areas, but also in terms of economic development too. So that's a great point. All right, next was adopt a disaster recovery plan across all departments. Now, again, just like many of these things, this is something that you all as a county work on. But I mentioned earlier that the discussion grew throughout this process specifically about COVID, but this isn't just talking about COVID, keep in mind. But we learned very quickly that COVID impacts every aspect of our community. whether it be the library, whether it be social services, whether it be healthcare, whether it be parks and recreation, whether it be economic development. It impacts education, certainly. It impacts everything. So this is simply about alignment, and this is simply about making sure that we grow this plan from public safety simply to, meeting the needs of, the disaster implications of all departments. Couple of others, and then we'll wrap up. One is improved communication, improved community participation and increase public trust. Now, this probably goes back to the comment earlier about visioning. I get this and I understand this. I know how this all works, but it absolutely is something that has been a common theme through this process. Number one, participation and the challenges with participation. That happens in any rural community. We talked about it here. We tried to do the best we can, and as I mentioned before, we know there's still gaps in that. And then number two is it was communicated that perhaps the county doesn't have the tool set that it needs to communicate to the citizens. And that's a simple task, but what happens is when the citizens don't know what's necessarily going on, that might bring some trust issues, if you know what I mean, between the citizens and the local government. And again, it goes back to exactly what you were talking about before. I get that, but all of this can be addressed through communications, just stepped up communication and building communication tools. So the idea here is create a communications plan, expand our tools to where we can, interact, communicate with the citizenry, but also find ways to encourage more robust and additional public participation. One of the strategies that's not listed here in the 10 key strategies, but is directly related to this one, is we feel strongly, and the committee feels strongly as well, that the county should look at the potential to hire a public information officer to help facilitate this, whether it's the communications plan, to help facilitate outreach moving forward. Perhaps even, maybe that person could help sort of lead the ongoing annual evaluation of the strategic plan itself, because there's a communication element to that. I think all of that's TBD, but really to do what I think needs to be done in terms of communication, having or designating a public information officer is going to be critical. And then finally, the last of those 10 key strategies is enhancing entryway quarters into the county. You've got a beautiful county. I love just driving through it. I try to get here early so I can just absorb the county before I have my meetings. I'm sure you all enjoy it. There's things that draw people to this community to live, but it's also things that visitors enjoy as well. So looking at enhancing those corridors that we have through the county, it could be banners in the communities you see there in the lower left that highlight the different districts that we have. That's more of a local communication type thing, to really give those communities and raise their identities, to things like branded wayfinding, upper right there, which really is going to be tools that you can use to direct visitors and locals to those different civic and cultural destinations that you have throughout the community. And then also gateways, gateway signage. You've got the interstate, you've got other key corridors through your county. That's a great opportunity for you to highlight and say, hey, we're New Kent County, we're a really special place. I know that Justin's been working on some pre-planning with this, with looking forward in capital improvements as well. So this is something that can really enhance the community as well. So all of that I've talked about is in all of the materials that you've been presented with prior to this meeting. I absolutely want to give you all time to absorb it, to think about it, to review it, and give us input for sure on that. And the next step for us, as you all are doing that, I think is for us to take that to the community as well. And again, Terry referred to that at the very beginning of our presentation here. We are meeting with the steering committee next week to talk about how we're going to do this public workshop of the draft plan. We don't have the details yet, but we are going to hammer those out. Right now, the thought is that we're going to share this drop-in style with the public. And again, don't hold me to this because we're still working on this. But we're thinking about a 1 to 2 week drop-in where it's a hybrid. We're going to have a virtual drop-in. We'd probably produce video shorter than my presentation today to introduce the draft plan to the community. We could either produce that and put it on Facebook Live or Facebook with the 500 plus people that follow that, or we could do something like we did in the workshops and do something live, either on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Also have a physical drop-in where we develop summary boards, the character board, some of the highlights of, well, actually really all the strategies and goals themselves, and probably place them somewhere within the county, most likely the visitor center, to have the community be able to come, look at it on their own time, and provide input as well. Ultimately, we're looking at, again, a hybrid version of feedback loop, whether it be the Facebook page, whether it be those boards. Probably also develop some other online tools as well, like SurveyMonkey. We're still looking at the best ways to do this. Live polling, or not live polling, but polling like we did before for some of these strategies. And then take all of this input ultimately and use that, again, with your input as well, to refine this and move it towards final plan. That's the idea right now. We're still in discussion mode with the committee about how exactly this would be staged. We know that right now there's no perfect way to do this. We're trying to make the best of the situation, but it's important for us to get the community's input, continued input, particularly given their dedication to the process before. So that's what I have to share. I know it's a lot of stuff. I know we've talked about a few things, specifics, but I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you all have, any comments that you all have right now, and certainly in the future as you have an opportunity to look more deeply into this.
Mr. Chair, first of all, thank you for not only your presentation, but the months and months of hard work going into a strategic plan. However, I do have some comments. First, for our budget year FY22, we are entertaining the possibility of public information officers, so we're on it. My other concern, as always, are our older adults in the county and how they're reached. We already talked about a lack of broadband or internet connection, but our seniors, our lifelong members of this county, how involved were they in the process? How involved are our population, our young adults? Everywhere our young adults are missed. We look at our children, they have safe places to learn, to play. However, what about those young adults that don't have families, that don't have children? What about those that are 20 to 35 or 40 years old? Are they involved in this? And what is our vision for our young adults? The other thing is livable communities. When I graduated from high school many centuries ago, I didn't graduate finding a job with an income of $80,000 a year, nor $50,000 a year. So we don't have livable communities for our graduates, and even for our young adults. We don't have, so what's the vision for that? What's the vision for our older citizens that we don't have rehabs? We don't have rehab centers. We don't have assisted living centers. And I know you gave us a bunch of maps that I have to tell you are with bifocals, and I can't see the plan. And so maybe it's there. I don't know. And then we do have many families in our county that are lower income families, and we found that out especially through COVID, especially through DSS. What is the plan? What is the vision for them, and what is the vision for diversification in our county? What is the input of our African Americans, of our Indians, of our Asians in our county in this strategic plan? And then I heard about what we would do with our comprehensive plan, but then we have our zoning and we have our land use. So the direction that's given to those directors as to how to upgrade that. But more importantly, how do you plan to get the word out for those that we used to have a New Kent guide where everything was mailed, every household got it. Is that what we're going to do to get them involved? Because for me, that becomes an essential part of what this county looks like. If people take the opportunity, that's one thing, but have they been presented with the opportunities? And I have received an invitation to one of strategic plan meetings. Most times I don't even know when you're having them. And so I will absolutely go through this. I would absolutely appreciate a blow up of this, and so that we will have time to, as board of supervisors, to look over, to digest, and absolutely talk to our constituents and have our input into this strategic plan for our county.
I love that, and absolutely, I definitely want to give you all time to look at it and absorb and really use your wisdom too in helping us understand as we're thinking about unveiling this to the public, thinking about ways to reach folks. I mean, we know from day one that we've worked on this. We've done, we've done a lot to reach underrepresented populations in the county. But as I mentioned before, as I reflected before, we know there are absolutely still gaps. And part of that is, you do something virtually online, you're going to immediately have gaps in a county like yours. Versus two, you have a community meeting or kickoff meeting in January of last year, and I mean, you can look around the room and you can tell it's a few segments of the population that probably doesn't necessarily reflect the whole county. So that's important. We did do work to try and improve that. Case in point is the youth. We had a round table because we saw in our online tracking of the online survey that population that you're talking about, young people, young professionals, as well as youth, like high school and younger. We definitely had a round table to get that input, but also try to get them to do the survey, and they did, and that helped. Mm-hmm. But again, we know there's still some gaps in that. So, again, I think that we've had robust input. Honestly, I don't know that we've ever done a plan that has had a perfect cross-section of input in the community. That's no excuse. That's just kind of how it works. But with y'all's wisdom, hopefully y'all can help us figure out the best ways to reach the folks that aren't necessarily being reached, because their input is important for this plan moving forward. So.
Absolutely, and it is absolutely not nothing negative about it. With no means. It's just that that is the vision of the strategic. That is my vision of the strategic plan, and I know that many times with any kind of plan that we have, it's far easier to be a part of the planning versus to go back for the changes. And so I absolutely want to make sure that our history and those that have seen our county grow, that they have not, that they are a part of this. Because with everything that we want to see in this county, for someone that was born and raised here, I could care less if I drive 30 minutes to get to a grocery store or a cleaner's. I don't care. When you were born in New Kent, you drove 30 minutes everywhere. So, but I don't think that, I want to make sure that the history and those that were born and raised here absolutely have their input into what do they see the county looking like.
Yeah.
And that's important. It's important to me as those that have moved into the county from other areas, and they have a fresh eyes of what this county can look like. So I think that it takes the community effort of both of them to work together so that we can have a well-rounded 23,000 people county. And so when we talk about being the second fastest growing county, and it's like, oh my God, we've grown so fast. We're 23,000 people.
That's such a great point. You're growing fast, but it's only because of percentages, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're still absolutely a small rural community, and you're sandwiched between these two more urban areas that's kind of fueling some of that growth, but still, you know, if you look at the numbers of bodies that's in growth, that's nothing compared to some of these other areas.
Absolutely.
So yes, you're fastest growing, but you're still rural. And I'm glad to hear too, because I didn't know this because we talked about this, but I'm glad to know that y'all are thinking about a public information officer, because that won't solve all the problems, but that will help. That will help with outreach. That will help as you particularly go through other processes, whether it's comp plan or zoning or whatever plan it happens to be, with improving those numbers, improving those gaps, and really, you know, encouraging public engagement where we may not have had it before. So that's incredible. I love to hear that y'all are on that. I didn't know that until just now.
Mr. Chairman? I'd just like to add, too, you guys did a great job putting this together. The presentation is excellent, and information is really good. I did learn a couple of things in reading your information, especially the market information. I was very surprised to find that half of the homes in New Kent were built after the year 2000. That kind of was an eye-opener. And something that Ms. Page touched on also that really kind of jumped out at me was that about 50% of the people that rent in New Kent are cost burden, to use your phrase, and that just does really reflect on the need for affordable housing in New Kent County. And it's really difficult when 89% of the housing in the county is individual private homes. So none of us wants density or apartments and all that other stuff, but we do have to find a way to get that balance for affordable housing. And I just would like us to really kind of include that in our strategic planning, that, you know, not everybody that comes to New Kent, or not everybody that was born here, lives in that median range of 89,000 income per year. So we need to keep that in mind. And also, I just want to go back to one more time, because I like to beat a dead horse. When it comes to the goals, I really would like the performance metrics to be tied to each one of those. Because if we don't have a way to measure whether we accomplish the goals, then we don't really have a plan. And I'd like for us to really, you know, make sure that there's an emphasis on that.
Loud and clear. I think that's just, we can find a way to, you know, make sure that happens. It's there, it's just not apparent. So I hear that for sure.
Anybody else? All right, well, appreciate the presentation today, and I guess we'll look forward to working with you to see this thing.
Absolutely, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next item is other business. Mr. Hathaway, we have any other business? I know we have the appointments.
Yes, we do have appointments for some regional boards. I believe you have that before you. Before we get to that, I just want to make an announcement. The board knows, but to the public that's watching as well. Starting March 1st, we will be relocating some offices in the administration building while we undergo the replacement of our HVAC system in this building. Starting March 1st, the Commissioner of Revenue's office and Treasurer's office will move across the street to the building that was once occupied by Apex, which is located behind the Colonial Kitchen and Market restaurant. That's where those two offices will be located. Administration and finance will be located in the historic school facility on the second floor, and our HR department will be relocated to the lower level in the planning suite. Anticipating that move will take place from March 1st till mid-May as we work on the first level, or replace the units on the first level, and then we'll transition to replacing the lower level units, and then we'll have the relocation of our permit center and the departments that occupy the lower level starting mid-May. Also, I'm sorry, since the upper level will not be available starting March 1st, our board meetings and work sessions will be relocated to the school board administration office, which some people refer to as the old courthouse facility, starting next month. Same time, same date, but just a new location.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I have an appointment. I move to appoint Patricia Page as New Kent's representative to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority to serve a one-year term ending December 31st, 2021.
Mr. Chairman, I have two appointments. I move to appoint Justin Sarter as New Kent's representative to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority Technical Advisory Committee. I also move to appoint Kelly LeDuc as New Kent's alternate representative to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority Technical Advisory Committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint John Moyer as New Kent's Planning Commission representative to Plan RVA to serve a one-year term beginning January 1, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2021.
Okay. Any discussion on the appointments? If none, Ms. Watkins, poll the members, please.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
And Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Any board members have anything else?
I do, sir. I just want to recognize yesterday there were a lot of black ice issues on the road yesterday, and tragically, sadly, two young people were killed in a car accident on Farmers Drive. It appears to be an issue pertaining to black ice. And I just want to, acknowledge to the families that lost two young folks that our prayers are with them. And I just would also implore folks to be aware of the conditions that you're driving in and set your speed accordingly. It literally can save lives. So please, and thank you.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge all of our county staff that worked yesterday so diligently to try to get our residents in New Kent vaccinated. I can tell you that through fire rescue, through our sheriff's department, and especially through our administration, our county administrator, assistant county administrator, and Krista and Ms. Watkins and Holly. It was absolutely a day that our residents were very grateful, and that we will be having weekly clinics, and this group is working diligently to assist in getting our residents vaccinated for COVID. And so we ask that everyone who has not registered in the New Kent County database, that you will call 804-966-9677 and register, as well as the Chickahominy Health Department to register to get your COVID vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to thank the schools for their help in allowing us to have that space.
All right. If there's nothing else, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, March 8, 2021, and the next work session at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, March 31st, 2021, both in the courtroom of the historic courthouse, the school board office. The board will also meet for a budget retreat beginning at 9 a.m. on Friday, March 12th at 2021 in Providence Forge at the Providence Forge Recreation Center, 9900 Carriage Road, Providence Forge. With that, we're adjourned.